bullshit more. The media is all eyes on Trump. They're focused on him because of the 4 indictments, he's the first president to have a mugshot, and the multiple civil cases he's facing. In fact, right now, everyone's losing it because he just got disqualified in the state of Colorado for the January 6th riot. I've always been one who tries to get both parties of any conflict to just agree on the simple things. I've made videos trying this. One was with Anna Kasparian, another was with Cenk Uygur, and then another, I think, with Secular Talk. And I'd agree with them with things like the power of corporations, or the unfair press, or the rigged elections. According to Reuters, on December 19th, former President Donald Trump was disqualified from serving as US President and will not appear on the primary ballot in Colorado. This ruling by the Colorado Supreme Court was made because they found the US Constitution bars Trump from appearing on election ballots. The CSC used Section 3 of the 14th Amendment to make this unprecedented 4-3 ruling. The section reads, "No person shall hold any office, civil or military, under the United States who have previously taken an oath as an officer of the United States to support the Constitution of the United States shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof." The CSC believes Trump meets those requirements because he was president while giving his January 6th speech, which is believed to be evidence of him inciting an insurrection. The only issue with this ruling is that Trump actually doesn't meet the requirements. Not only did Trump not instigate an insurrection, but the 14th Amendment doesn't even apply to him. To go one by one, I've become sort of this expert of the whole January 6th speech. I was doing research for a previous video I did about a month ago, and I had to listen to the speech a lot. And I remember going into it thinking like, oh man, there's gonna be so much dog whistling here, I'm gonna have to like take timestamps so many times. But when I listened to it, there was nothing. I've listened to it at least 8 times at full length, and I know for a fact, in that hour-plus speech, he only mentioned going to the Capitol twice. The majority of that fucking speech was Trump just showing evidence of the election being rigged.
Each and every one of these issues is enough to give us a victory in Georgia, a big beautiful victory. Make no mistake, this election was stolen from you, from me, and from the country, and not a single swing state has conducted a comprehensive audit to remove the illegal ballots. This should absolutely occur in every single contested state before the election is certified. In the state of Arizona, over 36,000 ballots were illegally cast by non-citizens. 2,000 ballots were returned with no address. More than 22,000 ballots were returned before they were ever supposedly mailed out. They returned, but we haven't mailed them yet. 11,600 more ballots of votes were counted, more than there were actual voters. You see that? So you have more votes again than you have voters. 150,000 people registered in Maricopa County after the registration deadline. 103,000 ballots in the county were sent for electronic adjudication with no Republican observers. In Clark County, Nevada, the accuracy settings on signature verification machines were purposely lowered before they were used to count over 130,000 ballots. If you signed your name as Santa Claus, it would go through. There were also more than 42,000 double votes in Nevada. Over 150,000 people were hurt so badly by what took place that 1,500 ballots were cast by individuals whose names and dates of birth matched Nevada residents who died in 2020 prior to November 3rd election. More than 8,000 votes were cast by individuals who had no address and probably didn't live there. The margin in Nevada is down at a very low number. Any of these things would have taken care of the situation. We would have won Nevada also. Every one of these were going over, we win. In Michigan, quickly, the Secretary of State, a real great one, flooded the state with unsolicited mail-in ballot applications sent to every person on the rolls in direct violation of state law. More than 17,000 Michigan ballots were cast by individuals whose names and dates of birth matched people who were deceased.
But in the 2 times where Trump did talk about going to the Capitol, he made sure that it was clear that he wanted it to happen peacefully.
Oh, but what about the fight like hell part, the you must show strength part?
I keep hearing those arguments from mainstream media, and it just really pisses me off because it's so easy to debunk, but so many retards fall for it. The "you have to show strength" claim is Trump talking about the politicians, not the people.
We're going to walk down to the Capitol and we're going to cheer on our brave senators and congressmen and women, and we're probably not going to be cheering so much for some of them, because you'll never take back our country with weakness. You have to show strength, and you have to be strong.
With the fight like hell line, it's literally Trump just talking about himself.
And again, most people would stand there at 9 o'clock in the evening and say, I want to thank you very much. And they go off to some other life. But I said, something's wrong here. Something's really wrong. Can't have happened. And we fight. We fight like hell. And if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
The part leading up to it is pretty understandable. He saw fraud, so he didn't get up easy. When he says we, he means the Trump administration, his lawyers, his entire crew. Even if you think I'm fucking insane for those explanations, I think if you just look at the speech, look at the content of the speech, you will realize it's not a part of this sinister plot. As far as the 14th Amendment not applying to Trump, that's actually been an issue courts have struggled with. Minnesota, Michigan, New Hampshire, and Arizona have all struck down attempts for Trump's removal. There's a big confusion on if the President of the United States is an officer of the United States. To remind and summarize to save time, Section 3, Amendment 14 says if you engage in an insurrection and you're a person who took an oath as an officer of the United States, you can be disqualified. And that's how the CSC got Trump. They believe it is clear that the president is an officer of the United States, and that's what will be contested by the Supreme Court. It's not 100%, but seeing that many blue states are trying to do the same thing that Colorado did, it's highly likely to go. Okay, so as a little update while I'm editing this, and also to further prove my point that this will most likely go to the Supreme Court, apparently Maine has now banned Trump from the ballot, also off of the 14th Amendment, the insurrection ban. Republicans rightly had a major freakout after seeing this unconstitutional ruling. Vivek Ramaswamy promised to remove his name off the Colorado ballots, which I think was a pretty smart move. He also called on Christie, Haley, and DeSantis to do the same. They of course didn't. No, them three had the same "what the voters decide" response. I think it's a pretty weak move, but I do feel that many Americans would agree with what they actually said, including me. I also saw the lieutenant governor of Texas threaten to ban Biden from the ballots in Texas for not helping with the border. As a proud Texan, I'll decline. I'd rather beat him at the ballots, since it's fucking Texas. It's also just wrong to do so, and I think it's an instance where you don't want to fight fire with fire. On the left, President Biden said there was, quote, "no question Trump supported the insurrection." Keep in mind, this is the guy campaigning and standing up for democracy. If you guys don't know this, he legitimately cheated in Florida. Unconstitutionally cheated in Florida. No press. Zero press. It's insane. But not everyone on the left is cheering for this. Some understand how insanely insane this is, including presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. She said on Twitter, quote, "no matter what we think of Donald Trump politically, he must be treated fairly by our justice system. Equal treatment before the law not only means that everyone is held accountable, but also everyone is innocent until proven guilty. Trump has not been proven guilty of insurrection in a court of law, and a ruling based on nothing but that opinion is stepping onto a very slippery slope." Even though she's a crazy socialist, I completely agree with her here. She even replied back to some of her crazy supporters who thought she was wrong. Young Turks' Anna Kasparian also voiced concerns over this ruling, but her concerns stem from threats that Trump supporters have made and the possibility of violence breaking out.
We're talking about a group of people who are heavily armed, okay? And we're also talking about law enforcement that is short in terms of staffing, in terms of the number of officers. There's like a giant shortage right now. So I don't know. I know that there has been, at least among the MAGA crowd, some portion of them, some percentage of them have been itching for a civil war, and they've been very vocal about that. I'm just concerned about violence breaking out.
Now, I'm not calling for violence, but I don't think this ruling helps with decreasing the possibility of that happening. I think this is by far the most unconstitutional act that has been done in an attempt to stop Trump from being president. You know, I saw Trump post this thing of like, oh, the last time this happened, it was to President Lincoln. You gotta start thinking about that. And it's obviously, tongue-in-cheek, but there is some truth to it. And to be honest, this ruling does set up Trump to just have a killer campaign against Biden. I talked about this in my last video. Biden's whole plan is to run on fear again. But Trump now has endless evidence of this election being rigged against him. As far as the case, I don't think the question is, will the Supreme Court rule this unconstitutional? It's, how will they rule it unconstitutional? There's 3 outcomes. 2 of them we should be rooting for. 1 of them we should be rooting for extra hard. The first one, which is the most unlikely, is that the Supreme Court agrees with Colorado and says it's A-okay. The second option, which is one that we should be rooting for, is the possibility that the Supreme Court says this amendment does not apply to Donald Trump because he was president at the time, and the president is not an officer of the United States. The third option, which is the one that we should be rooting for extra hard, is the possibility that the Supreme Court says Donald Trump did not engage engage in an insurrection. This will not only shut down this conversation, but will also fuck with Jack Smith and Fani Willis's investigations. You see, if the Supreme Court just says the amendment does not apply to Trump, then Fani Willis and Jack Smith are able to use Colorado's ruling that Trump's speech is criminal and use it to help in their cases. But if the Supreme Court says no, Trump did not engage in an insurrection, then Fani Willis and Jack Smith can go fuck themselves and make a different argument. You know, honestly, I see a good future. I think Democrats have crossed this line now to where all Americans see how extreme they have gotten. Because I know, even if I wasn't a Trump supporter, if I saw this happening, I'd think this was insanely unconstitutional and unfair. I mean, think about it. It's the leading presidential candidate, period, out of everyone, any party, who just got kicked off the ballot. I think people will see Biden's fear campaign and see Trump's campaign and see all the attachments to Trump's campaign, all the indictments, the mugshot, everything attached to it. And they'll look at it and they'll say, is this even believable? I mean, this guy would have to go down as one of the biggest criminals of all time. This is quite literally the most rigged presidential election in American history, and the people are still winning.